Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, and this is the Deadair Primal. The Primal is a .458 caliber suppressor that's intended for large caliber, high pressure rifles. But it's sultry and soft enough, as advertised, to be used on pistol calibers as well, if that's something you're so inclined to do. For the review purposes, I was going to be using it on 5.56, 7.62 by 39, 300 Blackout, and 6.5 Creedmoor. That's pretty much the biggest caliber I own, even though this thing is rated 3.3 at Lapua, which is one of the big daddies when it comes to high pressure, large caliber rounds. What you're getting is a one size suppressor, 7.9 inches in length, which is pretty long for what some people are looking for. This can doesn't really have the CQB vibe to it, although depending on the length of the firearm you're putting it on, it can certainly be used for that. It's more intended for maybe long-range hunting or just long-range shooting, or when the length of the suppressor isn't a huge consideration over suppression and performance of the suppressor in general. Another cool feature of the suppressor right out of the box is it's the hub mounting system compatible. It can using Xeno or Chemo or direct thread. So you've got all the options that you'd like to have that we know from Deadair, such as the newer Xeno system or the more the older but still very good QD system from Chemo. You can put either of those systems on the suppressor to use the e-brakes and features like that. So all the features you're used to from a Deadair suppressor, giving you a new body style, a new profile, but it's going to have hopefully the same features that I personally appreciate Deadair for, which is extreme durability and reliability under hard use. For construction, we're seeing a very similar profile as we're used to from Deadair. This one is primarily 17.4 stainless steel, which doesn't have the same name appeal as some of the other materials we see people make suppressors out of, Deadair included, but I know 17.4 to be a very reliable material to make hard use things out of, from knives to comps to suppressors. So I wasn't expecting to have any reliability issues, durability issues I should say, as far as the materials the suppressor was constructed out of, but I'm always open to being proven wrong throughout a review process. 2,000 rounds is the standard, and with the suppressor, what I'm mainly looking for is consistency, especially as the suppressor gets hot. Quality of the mounting system, does it affect accuracy, and if so, in a negative or positive way? Return to zero, of course, whatever the mounting system happens to be, and just overall reliability of the suppressor for as far as tone to the ear, hearing protection, because that's ultimately what it's for, and performance. So one of the things I wanted to do during this process is I just wanted to use the Xeno mounting system, because I've got plenty of Chemo stuff, and direct thread is direct thread, which I do prefer direct thread. But Xeno's kind of like that. I get a new type of muzzle device, be it a brake or a flash hider, and I just screw the suppressor onto it, and that's something I like. I like things that just thread on and thread off. Don't get me wrong, QD systems are great, but in my experience, QD systems are not often providing the same degree of accuracy that I'm going to get from a direct thread system or something that is kind of a little more secure in its mounting. So I went ahead and used the Xeno muzzle devices systems and used that throughout the suppressor review. First 500 rounds were mostly 308 and 5.56, just getting a good feel for the can, and that brought us to the burn down, which happens second 500 rounds, because I kind of changed the order of things almost a year ago at this point. I did the 500 round burn down on 5.56 just because I didn't have enough 308, and I don't have a 308 machine gun, but I do have a 5.56 machine gun. So I wanted to go ahead and do that burn down. Now, of course, the burn down's purpose is 500 rounds as quickly as possible to accelerate the rounds fired. So if we identify any problems over that 500 rounds that we might not see otherwise. So if I fired the same amount of ammunition over a much longer period of time. With the burn down, generally takes me 3 to 4 minutes if I'm using semi-auto only. With a little bit of full auto action in there, I can knock that review out, or I'm sorry, that 500 rounds out much quicker. So here's your burn down.
Finish strong.
Warm. First, last round, no issues. Mounting stayed solid, accuracy stayed consistent. And one of the things I definitely appreciate is the tone did not dramatically change as the suppressor got hotter. And this is something I've noticed with some suppressors in the past, although nothing really recently. Once the suppressor got hot, it got louder and it started to make those very unnerving crackled poppy sounds that sometimes lead to or sometimes preface a failed weld where you shoot half your suppressor downrange. I've seen that on machine guns in the past and also on rifles. Just lower quality cans in a higher round count class generally don't mix. Not a problem I had with this suppressor. So then I just went ahead and with the last 1,000 rounds review process, just used it for general purposes. One of the things we do, of course, want to talk about is accuracy, but before we get into that, just talking about its performance on varied calibers. On 308 SBR, as well as a 762 by 39 SBR, 300 blackout, subsonic, this thing is super quiet. Of course, subsonic, there's no supersonic crack, it's in the name, but it can still be a little obnoxious depending on the quality of the suppressor. Putting this almost 8-inch suppressor on a 9-inch 300 blackout, even shooting supersonic 300 blackout, it was a very pleasant experience, a very good tone. It definitely brings it well below the threshold of pain that we're going to get at the ear, which is the point of the suppressor. You still want to wear Ear Pro, of course, if you're going to be shooting for an extended period of time, but even on supersonic 300 blackout, and then of course using it on 5.56, 308, 6.5 Creedmoor, all the calibers I used it on during the review process, the tone remained consistently comfortable, even when shooting close to objects to reflect sound, indoors, things like that. There's nothing bad that I can say about the actual report or the tone of the suppressor across the varied calibers that I used for review. Return to zero. This is something a lot of people worry about, and rightfully so. Not only do we want our suppressor hopefully to affect accuracy as little as possible going from suppressed to unsuppressed, but we want to be able to take the can off for whatever reason and then have confidence in the fact that the rifle will still be zeroed when we put the suppressor back on. Generally, QD systems are known for being able to provide that reliability. Direct thread should be as well, depending on if you're applying just the exact same amount of pressure. And it's very easy to see how a suppressor's tightness relative to where it was tightened during the zero can affect the aim, the accuracy, or sorry, the point of impact. This is something you can check yourself if you own a suppressor. You can get it super tight and just get it tight, and you probably might see as a point of impact shift based on where the gun was zeroed at. It's something I do want to check. I did this on my 6.5 Creedmoor, my Tikka 6.5 Creedmoor, because that's my largest caliber long distance gun that I personally have. Did 100 yards. I zeroed it with the suppressor on because I generally shoot suppressed. And that's it. That's the sentence. I don't like to shoot unsuppressed for any long period of time unless it's for video purposes. So I went ahead, threw the suppressor on there, shot a 5-round group using the 140 grain Hornady ELD round for 6.5 Creedmoor. Here you go. Then I removed the suppressor and fired another 5-round group after letting the rifle cool down just a little bit. What I'm looking for in this group is there a zero shift? With suppressors, there's generally going to be. Gun can be suppressed, zeroed, suppressed, take the suppressor off, usually does not impact in quite the same place. We want to see how drastic that's going to be. Some suppressors provide enough consistency from suppressed to unsuppressed that you can dope for it. And you can actually like, okay, I'm shooting unsuppressed, check my data card, I know I need to dial in this and dial in that, and now I'm good to go. So here's a 5-round group fired same distance, 100 yards, same round, unsuppressed. So definitely a zero shift there, no super big surprise. Finally, let's see if we get a return to zero out of this thing. I'm going to go and throw the suppressor back on it and fire my final 5-round group, same round, same distance. That is a comfortable return to zero. Did it return to zero? Close enough for what I was doing. Hitting a very small target at 100 yards. looked zeroed to me. Of course, there's other conditions taking place, increased fouling of the barrel, if you want to be super specific. Also, even though I was loading the rifle cool, the rifle wasn't cooling down completely to the original temperature it was at when it was fired. But that's okay. I would be comfortable with that return to zero. So if I had to take the suppressor off, putting the suppressor back on, I know I put the rifle down range, it's going to hit anything I'm realistically shooting at those distances. So that's something that I'm definitely comfortable with. There's nothing bad to say about this can. It has really good performance, it has a really good tone, it's durable, it works great across a multitude of calibers, it's got a lot of options available to it that we know Deadair for. I do really like this new Xeno system. They don't really consider it a hard use system, but I used it pretty hard, and I'm pretty happy with it. Some people may ask, well, why does this can even exist when you have like the Sandman L? And this is not the same suppressor, it's not quite the same price point. It kind of exists in a different environment, of course, and it has different specifications. So even though on glance it may seem to be a similar suppressor, it's not. And of course, those of you who are really specific about that, you can check the data for yourselves and say, oh yeah, it looks like the same suppressor, but all suppressors kind of look alike if you think about it. But it's not providing you the same features and not quite the same intent. This is a suppressor, like I said in the beginning of the video, that's intended for those high pressure, larger caliber rifles, and this definitely fills that category. And it would be very easy for them to take this design, step it up a little bit, and fill that very niche category of people who want to suppress 50 cals, because the design intent is definitely there. I think that's something they could do if it's something they wanted to look at in the future. I'd prefer them to go the other way and do be a dedicated 5.56 can, but that's okay. Someday. So if you're curious about this latest offering from Deadair, the Primal is a very cool can that's going to give you all the features that you're used to from Deadair, all the accessories that you want to use. And if you're looking for something that can be direct thread mounted or use a Xeno system or use key mod or whatever Chemo, whatever you're looking to do, this suppressor is going to give you those options. It's going to be a hard use, larger can, especially for people who are, like I said, not worried so much about the overall length of the suppressor so much as they are about the consistency, the durability, and the actual sound suppression. This is going to be a really good suppressor for that. It still has a pretty minimal profile compared to some of the bigger cans. The diameter is pretty reasonable because it gains a little bit more volume because of length. More baffles equals quieter guns, generally speaking. And this is something that's going to work from shorter to longer barrel lengths, and it's going to give you pretty much what you'd expect from Deadair, which is a hard-use suppressor, even when they're not trying to sell you a hard-use suppressor. I like the suppressor a lot, and it's definitely something that's going to probably find its home on one of my long-range guns, probably going to find its home on my Scar, my Scar 20, and just kind of live on that gun, just because I think it's a great performing can that's going to provide me exactly what I want from a suppressor. I'm Eric Count with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.